Everybody. Well, what a fun night we had last night. We had a fun party, just a nice dinner in a private room at an Italian restaurant to celebrate my birthday. And I had lots of wonderful friends came, and it was really beautiful because I got to introduce some of my friends to each other who I thought could be, you know, that they would really enjoy or benefit from meeting each other and from the introduction. So that was really nice. Hey Lexar, good morning. Good evening for you. So that was fun. Had a good weekend. Um, and what do I want to talk about today? Yesterday, I talked about going direct to God and how people like to get in the way of that, and how people like to get in the way of you being able to just talk to the universe directly. And they throw all kinds of blocks and um, religions and gurus and priests and leaders and everybody else. They throw it all in the way to try to get between you and something that you're already connected to intimately, right? Because you are part of God. So you don't have to go through anybody to get there, right? Good morning. Um, Another fun thing that I was thinking about is sort of these types of religious ceremonies. And what are those? What are these religious ceremonies that they make us do? Uh, and as I began to really understand what these were and use common sense when I studied them, then I understood, okay, that's what they're actually doing. So, I grew up studying the Bible and reading the Old Testament and reading the New Testament and all of that. And if you look at like all the long list, for instance, of religious laws that they had in the Old Testament, you have to wash your hands before you do this. You wash your hands and feet before you do the sacrifice, and you have to keep all dairy and meat completely separate in like separate locations and separate containers, right, and everything like that. And if something falls on the ground, you have to wash it and bless it and all of this sort of stuff. And back in those days, they didn't understand cleanliness and germs. Most people didn't in the same way. But they somehow figured out that if you did these things, guess what? You weren't going to get sick. So, and even pork, right? Back in the day, pork has a lot of has worms. It's actually infected. It can be infected with worms called trichinosis, and if you eat it, you can get these in your body. And so, but nowadays we have techniques where they irradiate the meat to kill those worms and to kill those eggs. It's kind of gross, I know, right? But if you think about it, back in the day, eating pork was be incredibly dangerous because of these parasites that lived in the pork that then could live in your body, right? So it made total sense to have pork be considered an unclean meat, which you were not allowed to eat, right? So these things, these rules were actually health laws. They were actually health rules to help keep the population healthy. Back in the day, they didn't have refrigeration, right? And guess what happens to dairy and to meat, right? Really, really gross when you don't have refrigeration. And you put them together, that bacteria from that dairy just compounds the bacteria in the meat, right? And it just makes you so, so sick. So that's what they were really getting at. Because I remember hearing in China, for instance, okay, let's go to other countries, and then we'll talk about fasting as well and what fasting is. In China, there is actually um, they believe, when I was growing up in China, right, you would not drink cold water. You had to drink hot water. Even in the middle of summer, it could be 85 degrees, no air conditioning, you're sweating away, and you go and visit someone's house and they give you this glass of boiling hot water. And in the Chinese tradition, they believed that that cold water would chill your, basically your insides and would make you sick. And they had all these laws about don't combine cold and hot, et cetera, because it's going to be bad for, and they use some term that is not something that we would traditionally consider, right? And what was interesting about this is they um, they caught on to something so important. And this was true in China for I don't know, hundreds, thousand years, right? That they believed this. Guess what? They figured out something really important. If you boil water, it's not going to make you sick. See? So they were 100% right. Had nothing to do, probably, I don't know, with, the heat and this and that and the other, and you shouldn't mix hot and cold. But if you didn't boil your water, then you were going to get sick. See? So, because what were they doing? They were generally peeing in the same stream that they were pulling their water out of, right? So, when you have large populations, you got to boil the water. Um, so that's another example, right? If you look at things like old wives' tales, right, where they say, old wives' tales are break a mirror, have 7 years of bad luck. Okay, what was that? Do you actually know what that meant? So all of these things have real practical stories. If you break a mirror, back in the day, the way they used to make mirrors when before you had like cheap aluminum and all these other metals, before they had that back, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 400 years ago, the way they used to make mirrors was they would take glass and they would have to cover the back of glass in silver, in real silver. So it was incredibly expensive, right? Mirrors were very prized and very, very expensive because they were actually made with real silver. So I'll bet you if you broke that damn mirror, right, you're going to have bad luck from your parents for the next 7 years. You're going to be punished and in the doghouse. So, right? So that's this, but they used this. They used that threat of bad luck to get people and children to be careful around mirrors. It wasn't that you were going to have bad luck, right? It was just that was the threat to get them to be careful. So, how do they do this in religious organizations as well? What about fasting? Fasting is a key piece of most religions, right? The Muslims fast for Ramadan, but they're actually not doing full fasting. They're doing intermittent fasting, right? And science has discovered that intermittent fasting is amazing for your health. It's really good for your health. So, if you fast, like 16 hours during the day, up to 18 hours during the day, it switches your body over from absorbing, your body has one mode to absorb nutrients. If you leave it without eating for long enough, your body will switch into a different mode. And that mode is getting rid of old, damaged, dead cells out of your body, right? So your body actually needs this time to do this. It's actually will help you not get cancer because cancers are corrupted cells. They're cells that have been damaged. And if they're allowed to stay and they start to multiply, and then they can get out of control and cause cancer. When you do this intermittent fasting, it helps rid your body of these dead, old, damaged cells because your body goes into full cleaning mode. If it's not having to focus all of its attention on digesting, it can go into full cleaning mode and just try to get rid of all of this. So a lot of people now are doing what's called intermittent fasting in the health world, where they say, okay, I'm not going to eat from this time till this time, right? They only eat in a window from say 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. and then they fast the rest of the time. Well, this is exactly what the Muslims are doing during Ramadan, right? Except it's from sunset to sundown. So it gives them that entire day-long period where their bodies are at rest from eating. They're fasting, and it switches their body into that mode. And it helps keep them healthy. You see? This is what the leaders were getting at because they didn't have the same kind of doctors and medical systems and all this other stuff. They wanted to keep their population healthy. And so this type of thing, this is how you actually stayed healthy. In Christian religions, right, in Jewish religions, they all have things where you fast for 3 days, okay? Even fasting for 40 days, 40 days, right, which is talking about Jesus went up and he fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, or he went out into the wilderness. And Moses, it talks about him going up into the mountains and doing the same, right? People think, that's impossible. You can't live without food for 40 days and 40 nights. Actually, 100% possible and incredibly healthy for you. if you do it right. There's a documentary on Amazon Prime which is called The Science of Fasting. And there are actually these hospitals. One I think is in Germany, one is in Russia. They've been studying this for 40 years. They take people there and they put them on a water fast for 40 days. And the documentary shows exactly what happens in your body, how your body switches over to a different type of fuel. It starts burning the fat in your body. And I mean, of course, you'll come out thin, but not unhealthy. And it can actually heal things that we consider chronic diseases, like asthma. It can be completely cured, like cured totally, done with it. So, and a lot of other conditions that they cure through this extended long-term fasting. Really, really amazing. And so you think about it, right? When in the different religions, when they would say we're going to do a 3-day fast, right? Like in Christian religion, or when I was growing up, we used to do like a 3-day fast or something like that. It really is, it's healing your body is what it is, right? So that is a great thing. It's a very cool thing. It's a beautiful thing that we want to be doing to heal our bodies. But on the other hand, and this is what I think is not good about it, is yes, it was originally put in place for a certain thing, but then it gets given this religious or moral significance where the religion is telling you if you don't do this, you're a bad person, or you're not going to go to heaven, or you're, going to be damned, or whatever that is, right? But it's not really that, right? It was like kind of like telling kids that if you break a mirror, you're going to have bad luck, right? Trying to scare the population into doing something that's for its own benefit, that's for its health. And maybe they didn't have the sophistication to understand that. Or, I mean, think about it, really. Like, how many things do you really do because you know they're good for you and you're supposed to do them? And how consistent are you at doing it, right? Like, we all know we're supposed to exercise every day. We all know we should be eating like green, healthy things. And then how often are we going for that, hamburger or ice cream, or I'm just going to skip my exercise today, right? So, if they realize we can't keep a population in control and doing all this stuff that's supposed to be for their own good health and benefit, if you don't have the willpower, really desire to do it, then it's easier to do it by scaring them, by scaring them that, God is gonna punish you and you're not gonna go to heaven, like have really big dire consequences if you don't fast, if you don't eat right, if you don't observe these rituals around washing and stuff like that. Interestingly, even all of the Jewish traditions and rituals around washing before they would sacrifice in the temple. So when they would, there's a whole description of it in the Old Testament in Deuteronomy, right? They would make these sacrifices. They would bring their sheep or their lamb or their cow or whatever and sacrifice it in the temple. And they would have to go through all of these ritual washings before they did it. And they would have to cut it a certain way. And they would have to give this piece to this person, that piece to that person. But if you actually read the instructions, right, what they were doing was creating a huge barbecue. So what people don't realize is the temple was a big barbecue joint, okay? And all the people would come to the temple and they would take this sacrifice and they would make a barbecue and they would feed the people at the temple, you see? So all of that ritual washing was so that the people who are offering the sacrifice would be clean. They would get rid of the dirt before they actually prepared food and fed everybody. So that you didn't make everybody sick. So you see, when you understand, like, oh my God, that's what this is coming from, then it doesn't have to have, it's not like God is going to be mad at you. Yes, we do these things to protect ourselves and protect our health and to help other people, right? But God's love or blessing or lack thereof has nothing to do with these rituals, right? These rituals are really for our own health and well-being, and for the health and well-being of other people. And some guy got up there and said, hey, let's make this a sacrament, right? Let's make this holy to make sure that everybody's going to do it. right? To keep everybody healthy. And maybe they didn't even realize it. Maybe they just realized if we do these things, the population stays healthier, and they attributed it, right, to like some kind of blessing or something, rather than just being practical cleanliness knowledge that we have today, right? So, yeah, so that's the background behind a lot of these traditions, including not eating pork, which was incredibly diseased. I mean, it still is, right? They still have these diseases and worms in the flesh that will get into your body and literally like burrow in your body if you eat pork that hasn't been treated with in this special way, irradiated, which is how, like around the world, we make sure that that has to happen before you're allowed to eat pork. So these are the kinds of things that they made these religious laws about, but they were really in order to protect our health, to protect your health. So that's just a little, that may be a fun aside for today to help you understand that it's like so many of these things that people get all moral about, right? And they make it like this is God and he's going to punish you if you don't do these things and follow these rules, right? They are forgetting the historical and just the practical, logical significance. If you just read it, you're like, oh, wow, that's what they're doing. I get it now, and it's just boom. Okay, well, they didn't have refrigeration back then. They didn't have, proper cleanliness. They were tribes living out in the desert, basically, with cows and animals and horses pooping everywhere, They had to come up with a way to keep the place clean and structured and get people to wash, right? So that's where this stuff is really coming from. Yeah, if you know of any other kind of interesting or fun, I guess you could say, religious no-nos or things that you have to do, or cultural ones, right? Like I said, these old wives' tales and cultural things from China and so on, then yeah, put it in, right? Oh, another good one was walking under a ladder, right? Walking under a ladder was going to give you bad luck for years and years. Well, guess what? If you walked under a ladder that wasn't secured and it fell on your head, you were going to have bad luck, right? So it's really fun when you look at some of these old things and see where did they come from? Where did we get these ideas from? Even things like shaking hands, shaking hands. This had to do with showing you didn't have a weapon in your hand, that you weren't hiding a weapon behind you, right? So you would shake hands, and they would shake hands, they would clasp the other hand and be like, see, no weapons here, right? So there's a lot of fun stuff that you can learn when you get into it. Actually, when I did an internship in Parliament in the UK, I was an intern working for one of the MPs and for one of the ministers when I was in my last year of law school. And so I got to go around and see in the building, in the old parliamentary building. Some parts of this was built during Cromwell's time, like in 1050 BC. It's just amazing to see this history there. And like one of the halls is there, it was built from that time. And so much of what we have in our English language, so many terms that we use, come from things that come from stuff that happened there in that building, right? And like when people say it's in the bag, right? When you say it as a term, oh, don't worry about it, it's in the bag. Like we've taken care of it, right? That's a term that we use all the time. Nobody knows where it comes from. Actually comes from Parliament, because on the back of the Speaker of the House's chair is a little green cloth bag that's like nailed to the back of the chair. And when you finish writing a bill that they're going to vote on in Parliament, when the bill is done and ready to be voted on, they take it and they stick it in that bag on the back of the chair. And then it means it's ready to be voted on in that next session. See? So that's where the term comes from. It's in the bag. Anyway, there's lots of cool stuff like this. Yeah, so just look more to history and understand these things, and then you're not going to be weighted down by this feeling of moral imperative that you have to do things a certain way. When you understand where they come from and you understand to choose to do them for your own good, for your own health, it's a beautiful thing. Like I have friends who do Ramadan, and it's a great time for them. They feel better, they are focused on eating more healthy when they do eat, right? The fasting, it helps them to kind of rejuvenate themselves, you see? And it's a beautiful thing for their health and their well being. It gets them more focused on what's important. So, this is why we do those things. Not God is going to punish you, right? But because it's something beautiful and healthy and helpful for us. So, and if for some reason there's an emergency and we can't, we don't have to feel bad about it, but we just go back to doing our best and being healthy again, and implementing these good health things as soon as we can. So, anyway, wanted to give you guys that love. Hope you guys have a beautiful, beautiful day. All right. Thank you, Lexara. Alexa, appreciable information. Great. Good. Well, I'm glad you liked it. Glad it's helpful. Yeah, if you want to hear more about health stuff and things like that, I know a ton of information about that. That's something I've been studying for years. So, yeah, maybe we'll start talking more about that too. All right. You guys have a beautiful night.